Hello everyone. I remember watching Farmer against Ogawa in what was a very poor and sloppy performance, where he looked very ineffective with a lot of flash but no substance. And I remember the HBO commentary team in that fight because they were so out of touch with the reality, talking about an amazing defense and name-dropping Pernell Whitaker a record number of times. But he improved a lot since then. His balance is better either when moving or throwing punches. He learned to control the distance better by not stepping as far out of range as he used to do. And he keeps his punches shorter and telegraphs them much less, and he improved his timing. One of his problems is going to be that he doesn't have a punching power to worry Diaz, and is too open for counters when he steps in with the 1-2. Or when he goes to the body, but he's also too open at mid-range in general, and sometimes admires his own work too much. He throws the straight left very rarely, doesn't throw too many jabs neither, and even when he's throwing them, he's not doing it the way it would worry Diaz. He's not throwing stiff jabs that are going through the target, they are light instead. He's throwing them mostly when stepping in with punches. But in his recent fights I saw him stepping out of range and countering the opponent's counter with a jab, but not more than 2 or 3 times in total, which would be effective against Diaz if he would be able to use it constantly. Diaz isn't very active, especially when he's not serious during the training camps, and in those cases he fights at a low pace. He's very good at blocking the right hooks from the southpaws and the looping right hands from the orthodox fighters, so I don't really see Farmer's right hook being something problematic for him. But he can be caught by the fighters who are able to switch the fight range and throw the straight right on his counters while stepping outside. But like I said, I only saw Farmer doing it not more than 2 or 3 times against Carroll. Most of the times Jojo also does well blocking the looping lefts, but I've seen him getting countered with those when throwing the right hook, which Tevin does like to counter with. It happens because Diaz usually counters with one single power shot and doesn't always brings the gloves up as quick as possible. I'm just not sure if Farmer's overhand left counter would have much effect because of him being a light puncher and Jojo having good chin as well. They both like to fight on the inside, but if Diaz shows up prepared, I would expect Farmer to become discouraged from fighting in the phone booth after a couple of rounds, despite him recently improving his inside game a lot, but the difference is his previous opponents were either limited inside fighters skill-wise, or didn't have the power and speed to keep him off, so it allowed him to dictate the tempo on the inside against them. They usually just had their gloves up, they didn't know how to position themselves on the inside, were telegraphing their punches, and they were not trying to set up anything on the inside. Diaz makes the extremely good use of his guard and the right forearm to create the space for his punches on the inside and also to smother the opponent with it. Jojo also does well changing the positioning of his body from back to front foot and move it in between short and mid-range that way, which is a big contrast with Farmer's stationary and upright opponents before this fight. I like watching Farmer on the inside because he learned to be relaxed there and land the short left uppercuts to the body and to the head. His accuracy improved. And I like when his opponents slip his overhand left and he follows it with a sweeping right hook. But other than that right hook, I've seen him doing most of his work on the inside, just of his upper body movement without setting up anything. He's very open for the counter punches, and I can see Diaz landing the counter right hooks and overhand lefts upstairs, as well as the right uppercuts and hooks on Tevin's body. At the end, I think the difference in power is going to be visible, and it is going to make the difference at short range. he can potentially spoil the fight with his footwork and render Diaz less effective with movement, since Diaz needs to set his feet in order to punch, and I'd like to see Farmer countering with the straight punches and stiff jab when stepping out of range, but he's not that type of fighter. But I have to give credit to the people who are handling Tevin Farmer's career, as they're doing a great job keeping him very active, even now when he's boxing against the opponents on a higher level, which is very beneficial to him as he needs to learn on the fly despite being very experienced already, because of his lack of fundamentals, as he started boxing very late. He needs to stay sharp and active, and needs to be kept in great shape because he's very dependent on his reflexes and quickness. And at the same time he's accumulating the experience. In order to predict this fight correctly, there are still a couple of big question marks about this fight. First one is Joseph Diaz going to be well prepared for it or not? If not, I can see him getting outworked. Another one which may surprise you is Farmer's chin. Not because I think it may be weak, I think his chin is decent at least, but in my opinion he was fighting the boxers with limited offense, who were not really able to set up their punches, and that's where Jojo Diaz is different, despite not possessing amazing punching power. He's way better at getting himself into the position to land his punches than Farmer's previous opponents were able to. So if he's able to land on him and counter him often enough and Farmer doesn't have a really solid chin, I can see Diaz stopping him. I'm just hoping for Diaz not to show up in the same shape as in his last fight against Cuadro, because he was looking terrible. His timing, which looks great at his best, was off, and he wasn't setting up his punches. He fought in first gear and looked very lazy. I see a lot of people picking Farmer, and I'm a bit surprised, as I can see it happening if Diaz is motivated, other way than by a robbery, which, to be honest, always has to be considered as a serious possibility in this sport, as we don't only have to predict the fights based on the fighter's skills, but also on who's promoted by who's the A side, and the other things of that nature. Me personally, I'm picking Joseph Diaz by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to stop him neither. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting the like and subscribing. Thank you for watching.